What is going on, beautiful people? I hope you're all having a fantastic day. Today we're going to be talking about how to move to Denver and where to decide to live. If you're just kind of testing out the area, just kind of figuring out exactly what areas might be best for you and how to kind of go about that. And hey, if this is your first time to the channel and you're looking to learn a little bit more about Denver, some of the surrounding areas, whether that's the good, the bad, the ugly, all of the above. So if you'd like to learn a little bit more about that, make sure and subscribe below, tap the bell icon for notifications. That way you can be the first to be notified whenever I come out with a new video and you can be the first to learn. If you don't already know, my name is Michael and I get people reaching out all the time, looking to make a move to Denver, just have questions about the Denver area. So if that's in a week, 10 weeks, whatever it might be, reach out. My contact information is below and I'm more than happy to help you in whatever way I can. But without further ado, let's get right into the video. Now, whether you're deciding on, moving here, buying or renting here in the next few months, the best thing you could probably do is get in touch with somebody like me to kind of help you walk you through everything and pretty much just hold your hand all the way through. But if you're somebody who likes to do things on your own, or maybe you're just not ready for that much of a commitment, you want to do a little bit more research, then I'm going to walk you through kind of what you really need to do and how to do that in order to get to the Denver area or some of the surrounding areas. All right, the first thing that you really need to do is decide whether you're going to just buy a place right away or decide to rent. Now, I typically tell people that I recommend renting for at least 6 to 12 months when you get here. That way, if you get to a place and you realize it's not as great of a place as you thought it might be, then not a whole lot of commitment, you're not really stuck in that area for too long, and there's not a whole lot of downside to picking up and moving again. So if you're renting for a short term, even if it's like 6 months, you can actually get like an in-person feel for it. And hey, maybe that's not the right area for you, and you just go drive around some other neighborhoods that you might be like, hey, maybe this area might appeal a little bit more to you. And then after you kind of get a feeling of where you really would like to be, whether that's between activities, your work, there's so many things to consider when finding a place to live, especially like the perfect place. So once you get here and kind of figure out those things, I usually think that's the best time to do it. But I've had people reach out and, we do virtual tours and we just buy on the spot. They get here and they love it. So it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world, but I'd say if you've never been to Colorado or you're a little bit unsure of some of the areas around here or what might be best for you, then I'd highly recommend renting, maybe finding something with a little bit flexible of a lease. That way, if you, decide, oh, hey, look, found the perfect place, you can get right out of it and move into your new home. All right, now the second thing you need to do is figure out where you want to live in the Denver area, because there's tons of places and very few are like each other. So let's go take a look at the map and I'll just kind of talk you through a little bit of that. All right, so here we are at in Denver. Depending on your job, you might be virtual, you might be working in an office, might be a mix. So I guess if you're, you're virtual, you have a little bit more flexibility. You kind of have your free reign. I mean, you can go pretty much anywhere. I mean, if you're 100% virtual, it doesn't really matter where you're at. So I'd say for the most part, if you're working in an office, I mean, you got downtown Denver right here, the Denver Tech Center. So these two spots are probably most likely where you're likely going to be, or at least close to those areas, especially because, work events usually have things kind of in those spots. So once you kind of figure out where you're going to be working, because I imagine you probably have something lined up before you get to Denver. If not, I mean, you'd probably best off staying somewhat central. That way, regardless of where you're at, you're all relatively close to the majority of Denver. Then hey, you get somewhere over here, you're living over here, awesome. You get somewhere over here, you're living over here, maybe not so great. Maybe that's where having a rental would be nice. But for the most part, I mean, there you go. Or maybe, you don't care about commute. You're working here, just kind of like this general area. But if you don't mind, a longer drive in the morning, you got all the way out here. I mean, this is not terrible to drive. I mean, even on these outskirts, you're maybe talking 30, 35 minutes. It really depends on traffic and what time you're going to work. If you're going to work at the same time as everybody else, it's probably going to be 30 to 40 minutes. There's, bad accident on the road, it might be a little bit longer. But for the most part, as long as you're not on the other side, you're not looking at a terrible commute. I live kind of over in this southeastern section and I work right here. Usually 20, 25 minutes. I usually go this south way on Arapahoe and then up. Usually takes me about 22, 23 minutes. Usually if I'm headed to the office between 7:30 and 9, anywhere in there, it's gonna be about 25, 30 minutes. If it's a little bit after that, if it's between 9 and 11, it's probably closer to 20, 25 minutes. But for the most part, I mean, once you get here, you get a pretty good feel of the traffic and the traffic swings throughout the day. So as time goes on, you'll get pretty comfortable with that. But I mean, I highly recommend just going into Google Maps, kind of figuring out where you're gonna work, and then, maybe you don't want more than a 30-minute commute, even if it's busy, just map out certain areas that you might like to your job. And Google even has a thing where you can plug in the time that you're leaving. So plug it in, play around with the times, play around with the areas a little bit. But for the most part, you'll get a good idea of where you want to go. If you're looking for something that has almost no commute, maybe you might be looking up a little bit more this central area. There's definitely still some more affordable options, but as you get closer to the inside of the city, it definitely gets a little bit more expensive. Now, the next thing to consider is, your budget and how much you want to spend. Obviously, if you're going to be looking kind of on this western side, closer to the Front Range, then probably gonna be a little bit more expensive just in general. You're not gonna get as much house for your money. So you gotta figure out what's more important to you. But if you're going up to the mountains every other weekend, planning on doing a lot of hiking, a lot of biking, maybe you just wanna go ski a lot, or you think you might ski a lot, then maybe the Western Slope might be worth the slight price increase. Now, if you're looking for something a little bit more affordable, probably stick to kind of this half of Denver right here. I mean, all the way up and through here. It's gonna be a little bit more affordable, especially when it comes to like single family homes, something with a little bit of land. And I will say, as the further you kind of get out of Denver, then the cheaper things get, the more affordable things get. I mean, you could go out here and find a home for half the price as you find here. You might have a little bit more land, but you're 45, 50 minutes away from everything else. So just one of the trade-offs of living out there. But if you want more home for your money, there you go. Now, some of the most affordable areas throughout Denver, it's gonna be kind of your northern Aurora area, kind of all throughout this area. Commerce City, a little bit cheaper. North Glen, you got Federal Heights right up in here. These kind of areas. Thornton even has some, relatively affordable homes. I'd say it's probably the cheapest area you're probably gonna find throughout the Denver area. Now, if you just go like, step up of that, I mean, you're looking Westminster, Lakewood, parts of Littleton, even like Englewood. I mean, even throughout Centennial, throughout all of here, you're gonna find some medium priced homes. Southeast Aurora, I mean, it's like a slow trickle as you go down. It's a nice little arrow you got right there. Once you get down to the South Shore area, definitely gets pretty pricey. I mean, that's where you're getting $1 million+ homes. But it's just a slow trickle upwards. But I'd say all these areas are kind of in Wheat Ridge. I mean, all of these fairly inexpensive. Highlands Ranch you could probably loop in there too. Now, you have a little bit higher budget. I'd say, you got downtown Denver, City Park area, even got like Wash Park. You have Cherry Hills, Greenwood Village kind of right in here. You got Lone Tree, Castle Pines. We'll do a figure 8 right there for that, get them both. I'd say Castle Rock probably falls between that middle section, what I was talking about. But for the most part, I mean, once you get here, you'll kind of get a feel for some of the more affordable areas compared to some of the more expensive areas. But hopefully you kind of paid attention when I was circling things and telling you which one they were. But for the most part, there's a spot for most everybody here. And this is for both buying and renting. Renting stays a little bit closer throughout. If you're going to Wheat Ridge compared to Thornton. So if you're going to Highlands Ranch and renting compared to Thornton, it's probably going to be very similar rent prices, regardless of what you're renting. It'll probably be slightly higher, but it's not going to be the same as the home price difference, I'd say. So for example, if you're, renting house up here, it might be, $2,800, $2,900 a month for 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. Down here, Highlands Ranch, actually here, let me make that pretty for you guys. Let's just say $2,800 a month for 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. Down in Highlands Ranch, my guess, down in Highlands Ranch, you're probably gonna be looking at $3,200, $3,400 a month for a very similar size home. You can't even see it. But just to give you some reference, if you're renting really cheap, you're looking for like a room, I mean, you're gonna find plenty of that stuff throughout Aurora, some of these medium areas, I'd say. You have plenty of options throughout Denver. And the last thing you really need to consider is what you're looking for in an area, because you're not just moving there just for work. You're moving to Colorado because you have a good reason to. Nobody just moves to Colorado just because. People see it in a TV show, or they're Googling up, or they have a midlife crisis and they're just like, oh, what am I gonna do? I'm just gonna move to Colorado. And the reason that is because they think of the mountains, they think of adventure, outdoor lifestyle, all that stuff. So that's the next thing to consider of where you're trying to choose to live. So, if you're planning on being in the mountains all the time, you're gonna get ski passes, you're buying brand new skis, new ski boots, all that stuff, and you're planning on going up every weekend, maybe even during the week, you're probably gonna wanna live kind of on this western side. Just because, that extra, this drive right here, just from here to here, could be 30 to 45 minutes depending on the day. So, you're doing that every single weekend, back and forth, that's an hour and a half every single time. It's not fun, and it's probably gonna discourage you from going up to the mountains. If you're like, oh man, I got, an hour and 45-minute drive? Probably not. If it's under an hour, you're probably more likely to go out. Or maybe you're just looking for something that, plenty of outdoor space that you can go on trails, take your dog for a walk or run, whatever, bike, I don't know what you do. But, somewhere like that, I highly recommend kind of getting around these areas. Highlands Ranch has lots of great trails. I was just out there the other day, and you can't go 3 minutes without a huge section of open space and just bike trails, dirt trails, so many throughout. I think they have like 2,500 acres of open space out there. But you have all these little parks throughout. So if you're looking for something outdoorsy, but you don't need to have a ton of space outdoor, you're not going for a 50-mile jog or 25-mile bike ride. Some of these smaller parks, Sloan's Lake right there. That's actually probably one of my favorite parks throughout all of Denver. Highly recommend it. They have a nice 3-mile dirt track going around. They have all sorts of events there. They have tons of open space throughout Denver. Tons of open space up here, all throughout Englewood. They have lots of parks. Throughout Englewood and Littleton, you have tons of parks. I'd say if you're looking for parks, downtown Denver specifically, not a whole lot there. You're going down to Castle Rock, they got so much down here. Castle Rock's almost like a little mountain town down there. Tons of trails. You're really close to all this fun stuff. You're close to all this fun stuff over here. Larkspur, all this stuff. Now you're getting close to Colorado Springs area, which is also a great spot. But Denver specifically. Or maybe you don't necessarily need trails or outdoor space, and you're looking for something a little quieter. Then hey, maybe Brighton's a good spot for it. Brighton's kind of like a small town feel. There's not as many people living there. It's a little less congested. That kind of goes for all these outskirts. Even Parker's a little bit less mild, I'd say, than kind of all this area. As you get closer, it gets a little busier. But for the most part, if you're looking for something a little quieter, some of these outer towns, Northglen's actually a nice, to me it's like a hidden gem, because I used to live there and it seems very quiet and still. There's just not a whole lot of people there, it feels like, even though you get outside of Northglen and all of a sudden it's okay. Tons of people, way too many. So yeah, maybe you're looking for something quiet. Or one of the big things Denver has, sports. So if you're looking to go to all the games, right here is pretty much everything. There we go. All right, you got Broncos right here. Here, let me get the little pen for you. You got the Broncos Stadium. You got Rockies. You got the Nuggets and Avalanche kind of in here. Don't actually know exactly where off the top of my head. But if you're looking to go to a lot of sports, pretty much anywhere around here. This is all going to be pretty expensive in this circle right here. But, this is also a really solid spot right over here. You got the Broncos Stadium right here. But even this stuff, you can hop on a bus, get downtown pretty easily. I actually used to live kind of right in this area in Edgewater, and almost every Broncos game that was here in Denver, you just see a line of people walking. You have cars parked all up and down these streets, and they just walk just maybe half a mile, not even. It's relatively easy to get there. and you know, it's just this big line of orange just going to and from. So if you're into sports, maybe these aren't your things. Maybe you're a soccer fan. You want to go watch the Rapids, right there. But for the most part, if you're coming for the sports, that's kind of where they're at. So now next I'd point out if there were certain areas that have, you know, really great food or restaurants, but that's pretty much all over Denver. I mean, it's really hard to find anywhere throughout Denver that doesn't have just amazing food within 5 miles. You know, 5-10 minutes, you can find pretty much whatever you're looking for. So I mean, that pretty much is just all of Denver. I guess if you're kind of going out to the outskirts, or even maybe up north, kind of Brighton, Henderson area, I'd say maybe you're not gonna have as many choices. You're not really gonna be limited on those options. So that pretty much wraps it up for this portion of the video. But yeah, let's just get into the next one. All right, now that you've decided on where you want to live, the next thing is pretty much figure out how to get all your stuff from point A, from wherever you currently are, to point B in Colorado, wherever you plan on moving. Now, I highly recommend, if you're trying to save a little bit of money, just get a really long truck, fill up your stuff, maybe get some movers to help you load it up, and then drive it out yourself. It's usually a lot more cost effective, but if maybe that's not your skill set, or maybe you just don't want to be bothered with any of that stuff, moving trucks or moving companies, they do a great job. Definitely research the company that you use. Don't just go with the cheapest option, because they're handling a lot of your stuff and you don't want to get to your house and everything be broken because they weren't careful with your stuff. I'd also look into pods. They're these big shipping container things that you load up, they pick up, they drop it off your house. I would recommend calling in advance and just kind of figuring out how long it takes them to do that, because I'd hate for you to load it all up and then you move out and then realize your stuff's not getting there for another month. So I would just make sure the timelines line up for when you actually need your stuff out in Colorado, and make sure you have a separate stash of stuff that you can get by in the meantime. You know, your basic essentials, clothes, all that stuff. I'd also probably try and recommend avoiding some of the winter months. You know, if you're from Florida or maybe Southern California, ice and snow may not be something you think of right away, but you know, you get to Colorado and then all of a sudden you're carrying all your stuff up 2 flights of stairs into your new condo or an apartment building. It's not fun if there's a lot of snow on the ground, especially if you're the one driving the big moving truck and icy roads. Probably not a fun thing to experience for the first time. So if any of that worries you, I try and stick through mid to late spring and then through September. I would definitely keep an eye on the weather though, because there can be some snow. Definitely keep an eye on the weather though, because there are occasionally snowstorms at some unlikely times of the year. So just keep an eye on that. Make sure your smooth is very seamless. And when you do arrive, I definitely wouldn't discourage thinking about getting a few people to help you move your stuff in. For one, you can save a lot of time. 2, you can save a lot of potential back injuries. And 3, they'll put it right where you are and they'll do it 10 times faster than you ever could, because that's what they do for a living. So pay the $200-300 that it might take for someone to just unload your truck, save a little bit of time and money, and enjoy the move a little bit more. I promise all your stuff's gonna be unpacked a lot faster, because you're not gonna be exhausted from moving the stuff from the truck into the house. You're gonna have a lot more energy to start opening boxes, putting plates where they need to go, hanging up clothes, all that stuff. And that gets us to the last part and the most enjoyable, settling in. Now to do this, I recommend heading down to your local Subaru dealership, get yourself a dog, preferably from a dog shelter if you don't already have one. Make sure you have your shorts, t-shirt, flip-flops unpacked. That way, the first time it snows, you can go out and buy some ice cream like a lot of the locals do, and you'll fit right in. They won't have any idea. Just make sure and take off those license plates, especially if you're from California, Florida, and maybe you register your car. That way you can get rid of whatever license plate you came from. That way people don't even have any reason to question where you're from. And then after all that, you can go home and start planning your first ski trip. All right, guys, I hope that helped you kind of get an idea of how to get to Denver, where to decide to live, all the above. Now, it's plenty of little tiny details that I left out, but that is the brunt of it. And for the most part, that should get you to Denver. I hope you enjoyed the video, so if you did, make sure and hit the like button. And don't forget, if you are looking for help, or maybe you do want someone to hold your hand through this entire process, my contact information is below, so don't hesitate to reach out. I'd be more than happy to help you in whatever way I can. But until next time, I will see you guys later.